The greatest Jedi Master in galactic history. 900 years of wisdom, a connection to the Force so powerful he could sense disturbances across star systems. Yet somehow, Master Yoda completely missed the Dark Lord sitting right across from him in Senate meetings for over a decade. But what if he hadn't? What if those ancient instincts had kicked in, just once? Today, we're exploring how a single moment of distrust could have rewritten the entire saga and prevented the fall of the Republic itself. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. The relationship between Yoda and Palpatine represents one of the most fascinating psychological chess matches in Star Wars. For 13 years, these two masters of manipulation danced around each other, with Palpatine hiding in plain sight, while Yoda's legendary intuition somehow failed him completely. But the more you examine their interactions, the more you realize just how close we came to a very different story. So, grab your lightsaber, and let's jump into this alternate timeline, where the Force's greatest advocate never let his guard down around the galaxy's most dangerous predator. To understand how dramatically things would change, we need to first examine how Palpatine gained Yoda's trust in the original timeline. When we meet them in The Phantom Menace, Palpatine is already Senator of Naboo, and he's been cultivating his public persona for years. The genius of his deception wasn't just hiding his Sith identity, it was positioning himself as the Republic's greatest champion. Think about it from Yoda's perspective. Here's a senator who consistently advocates for peace, who seems genuinely concerned about the welfare of his people, who appears to share the Jedi Council's vision for galactic stability. When Queen Amidala calls for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum, Palpatine presents himself as the reluctant leader, almost hesitant to accept power. This perfectly aligns with Jedi philosophy about leadership, that those who seek power are often the least qualified to wield it. The brilliance of Palpatine's long game becomes clear when you realize he spent decades building this trust. By the time of Attack of the Clones, Yoda and the Council view him as such a reliable ally that they barely question his emergency powers request. The Jedi had become so comfortable with Palpatine that they essentially handed him dictatorial authority without serious debate. But here's where our alternate timeline begins. What if Yoda's Force sensitivity had detected something off about Palpatine from their very first meeting? We know from expanded universe material that Yoda possessed an incredibly rare ability. He could sense a person's true Force alignment through physical touch. The tragedy is, he apparently never had cause to shake Palpatine's hand with suspicion in mind. Let's imagine the pivotal moment occurs during the Senate session in The Phantom Menace. As Palpatine consoles Queen Amidala about the Trade Federation's invasion, something feels wrong to Yoda. Maybe it's the way Palpatine's eyes linger a bit too long on the suffering. Maybe it's how quickly he pivots from sympathy to political opportunity. Or perhaps the Force itself whispers a warning about the darkness lurking beneath that grandfatherly smile. Instead of supporting Palpatine's rise to Chancellor, Yoda would have immediately shared his concerns with the Council. Now here's where it gets interesting. Mace Windu and the other Council members likely would have been skeptical at first. After all, Palpatine had just helped resolve the Naboo crisis and seemed like the Republic's best hope for stability. But Yoda's influence on the Council cannot be overstated. When the Grand Master of the Jedi Order expresses serious concern about someone, people listen. The Council would have launched a discreet investigation, using their network of contacts throughout the Republic. They might have discovered inconsistencies in Palpatine's background, financial records that don't quite add up, political alliances that seem suspiciously convenient. More importantly, they would have used the Force to probe deeper. While Palpatine was skilled at hiding his Sith identity from casual observation, sustained scrutiny from multiple Jedi Masters would have been much harder to deflect. The dark side leaves traces, especially when someone has been immersed in it for as long as Darth Sidious. The investigation wouldn't have taken long. Within months, the Jedi would have uncovered enough evidence to confront Palpatine directly. And here's the key difference. They would have done so while he was still relatively weak, before he had consolidated emergency powers. Before he had built his network of loyal admirals and governors. With Palpatine exposed as a Sith Lord early in his political career, the entire Clone Wars scenario collapses before it can begin. Remember, the Trade Federation's blockade of Naboo was just the opening move in Palpatine's grand strategy. Without his political protection and secret support, the Trade Federation would have faced immediate Republic intervention. Count Dooku's fall to the dark side becomes much less likely in this timeline. Dooku's disillusionment with the Republic was carefully cultivated by Palpatine over many years. Without Sidious whispering in his ear about the corruption of the Senate and the failures of the Jedi, Dooku might have remained a respected Jedi Master. Even if he still left the Order due to philosophical differences, he wouldn't have had a Sith Master waiting to corrupt him. This means no separatist movement, no clone army commission, and no engineered galactic war. The Republic would have continued its peaceful existence, slowly working through its political problems, without the artificial crisis that Palpatine manufactured. But let's focus on the most important change, Anakin Skywalker's fate. Without Palpatine's influence, Anakin's path to the dark side becomes exponentially more difficult. Palpatine had been grooming Anakin since he was 9 years old, slowly building trust and dependency while undermining his faith in the Jedi Council. Remove Palpatine from the equation, and Anakin's relationship with the Jedi improves dramatically. Yoda, having learned the importance of trusting his instincts about dangerous individuals, would have been much more attentive to Anakin's emotional state. The Council's concerns about Anakin's anger and fear would have been addressed through proper guidance, rather than ignored or dismissed. Most importantly, without Palpatine constantly validating Anakin's frustrations and encouraging his darker impulses, the young Jedi would have had room to actually grow and mature. The exposure of Palpatine would have sent shockwaves throughout the Jedi Order, forcing them to confront their own failures and blindnesses. The fact that a Sith Lord had operated under their noses for years would have triggered a massive institutional self-examination. This crisis of confidence, painful as it would have ultimately strengthened the Order. The Jedi would have been forced to acknowledge that their connection to the Force had become clouded, that their involvement in politics had compromised their spiritual clarity. Rather than the hubris that characterized the prequel-era Council, we would have seen an organization willing to admit its mistakes and evolve. Yoda himself would have undergone the most significant transformation. The experience of nearly being deceived by a Sith Lord would have humbled him in ways that never happened in the original timeline. Instead of the somewhat rigid and dogmatic master we see in the prequels, we might have witnessed a more flexible and emotionally aware Yoda, one better equipped to guide young Jedi through their struggles. This reformed Jedi Order would have been far better prepared to handle future threats. They would have developed new protocols for detecting dark side influence, improved their intelligence networks, and most importantly, created better support systems for Jedi struggling with emotional challenges. The Council's treatment of Anakin would have been completely different. Instead of viewing his emotions as dangerous obstacles to overcome, they would have seen them as natural human responses that needed guidance and understanding. Anakin's marriage to Padme might have even been accepted openly, rather than forcing him into secrecy and shame. Without the Clone Wars devastating the Republic, galactic civilization would have continued its gradual evolution toward greater unity and prosperity. The technological advances that came from wartime research would have developed more slowly, but in service of peaceful purposes rather than destruction. The clone army would never have existed, meaning no Order 66. No systematic extermination of the Jedi. Instead of going into hiding, the Jedi would have remained the Republic's peacekeepers and spiritual guides. Luke and Leia would have grown up in a galaxy where their father was a celebrated Jedi Master, rather than the galaxy's most feared enforcer. But perhaps most importantly, this timeline would have avoided the moral catastrophe of the Empire. Millions of worlds would have remained free. Entire species wouldn't have faced genocide. The Death Star would never have been conceived, let alone built. Alderaan would still exist, its people alive and thriving. The ripple effects extend beyond just preventing tragedy. They create opportunities for unprecedented growth. Without a galactic civil war consuming resources and lives, the Republic could have focused on exploration, scientific advancement, and cultural exchange. We might have seen humanity and alien species working together to solve problems like poverty, disease, and environmental destruction on a galactic scale. This alternate timeline reveals something profound about the nature of evil and how it spreads. Palpatine's success wasn't just about his individual cunning, it was about how good people can become complicit through complacency and misplaced trust. Yoda's failure wasn't a lack of wisdom or power, but a failure to trust his own instincts when they conflicted with political convenience. The tragedy of the original timeline is that it was entirely preventable. The signs were there, the warning bells were ringing, But institutional inertia and the desire for political stability blinded even the wisest among the Jedi to the danger sitting right in front of them. It's a lesson that resonates far beyond the galaxy far, far away, about the importance of vigilance. The courage to question authority, and the responsibility we all bear to trust our moral instincts, even when it's inconvenient. So there you have it. One moment of distrust. One instant where Yoda decided to investigate rather than accept could have saved literally trillions of lives and preserved the greatest democratic institution the galaxy had ever known. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest decisions have the most enormous consequences, and that even the wisest among us must remain humble enough to question our assumptions. What do you think? Could the Jedi really have detected Palpatine's deception if they had tried harder? Or was his plan so perfectly crafted that discovery was impossible? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more Star Wars deep dives. Until next time, may the Force be with you.